Hey everybody, and welcome back to another book review. So I just finished the second book in the Legendborn series called Oathbound. And first off, I'm really loving the series. It's like right up there with Fourth Wing for me, just less explicit. But yeah, like I give this one a 4.75 out of 5. I'm just really enjoying the series. It's a very good series. I really like it. It is billed as like a young readers series, and I definitely would put it like for a mid to older teen, like 15, 16. And the main characters are like 16 to 20 or 25. And so it makes sense for it to be kind of built in that that age group and that age range. Makes a lot of sense. But the reason I don't give it a 5, but like I said, I'm really enjoying the series, but the reason I don't give it a 5 is I don't know. Let's go back. So the Legendborn series, this particular book, Oathbound, is continuing the story, following along with the character Bree Matthews, known as Bree, scion of Arthur. Her best friend calls her Maddie, because her last name is Matthew, so Maddie. But one of the things, or the main crux of this book is that we've now found out that she is the descendant of King Arthur, and she is descendant via rape during the height of the American slavery experience. And they kind of continue that conversation about like how a lot of the side characters initially don't want her around, especially when it comes to the people that are kind of in the upper echelons of leadership within the Order of the Round Table. And it keeps coming back to the fact that she is a black girl, and they were not expecting it to be a black girl, and they were confused as to how it even got into her family line and all that. And so they bring up a lot of that stuff. They also, in this book, which I really like, is they talk about some of the old farms and plantations that have been reclaimed by enslaved descendants. And in this case, in this part of the story, one of the places is called Volition, which I think they said was like the Guthrie plantation, which I meant to look up to see if that's actually a real place. But the ancestors have basically created this ward. So like only people that don't mean harm or are not planning on continuing to tell a narrative of like slavery times were a great time are basically allowed in. And then of course, anyone that's going to attack their descendants or descendants of the enslaved are not allowed in. So there's that piece of it. And I like that kind of adding of, hey, a lot of our power comes out of this, and our ancestors are willing to protect this because they did not have protectors. So, kind of continuing that story. Love that. What I don't like in this story, so the Bree falls in love with Nick, who she originally thinks is the scion of Arthur. Turns out he is the scion of Lancelot, so like Arthur's best friend. And one of the things they keep talking about is that the regents who are running the order from a top level situation, they keep talking about how the regents would never permit lines to be blended through romance. And so basically it's like under the impression that Nick and Bree, once it's found out that they are Lancelot and Arthur, that they will not be able to continue their dating relationship. But it's never acted upon. Why? Because Nick gets kidnapped by his dad. And so the whole book, Bree is struggling to get her friends to see the value of going and finding Nick, and they spend a lot of time also being kidnapped and drugged and their powers diluted, and then like Bree's trying to figure out what her powers are or how to even use them. It's a middle book. It's a middle book, and it's filling in a lot of gaps, and it's also talking a lot about character growth. Here's where I run into the problem. So obviously Arthur had Merlin. In Bree's case, she has a descendant of Merlin, and his um, name is Sel or Selwyn. And so the whole time, everybody keeps talking about how because Sel is not with the person that he is bonded to, they have to go through these like big rituals or whatever. And he was originally bonded to Nick because everybody thought Nick was the scion of Arthur. But because he's bonded to Nick, he isn't really fulfilling his oath of protecting Nick by staying with Bree. Granted, it's not entirely his fault because his dad, like Nick's dad, kidnapped Nick. But also, they are worried that Merlins are half demon. And so they keep saying Sel is going to succumb to his demon side. He's going to become, an enemy of you. He's going to try and kill you. All these things. And so Sel decides to cast spells so that Bree doesn't notice his slow descent. But he does so by manipulating a little bit her emotions around him and how he feels about her or she feels about him. And come to find out closer to the end of the book, and I probably should have said spoilers way back in the beginning, but at the end or close to the end, they wind up like kissing. And he's like, I 100%, feel this way about you. But he never actually says, I love you, I like you, or anything. He just says, you're the most powerful creature, you're the most beautiful creature, all of those things. And it truthfully bothered me, which is why I don't give it a 5. And I'm not saying that that, especially when you're young and you don't fully understand all of your emotions around romance. I'm not saying that it's impossible to like or love multiple people. I definitely believe that when you are young and you are developing how you feel about anybody, you do like and love a lot of people. But they have made it very clear that Nick and Bree are in this, or they plan to be in this very committed relationship, despite the fact that Nick has been kidnapped, which is why Bree and Nick are not currently physically in the same space. And so Sel kind of plays on that, but then for Bree to fall into that trap and then they just be okay with that. Like Bree's like, oh yeah, and they're like walking back and kind of doing the, oh, we're like, we just kissed and all the love and all the things. And it didn't make sense. It made sense in terms of if Sel is still manipulating her emotions, it would make sense. But they've already established that she is upset about the fact that he manipulated her emotions. She has found out about it. She's really unhappy with him for it. But he's like, I stand by what happened though. Like, yes, I manipulated you to an extent, but overall, what I said is true. Those feelings are still valid. Those feelings are still real. And I'm like, and nobody's going to tell Nick because they are both in communication with Nick. Telepathically, mentally. And so I don't know. I really couldn't get past that part. And I was really bothered by is Nick okay with it? Especially at the end of the book, which there's a lot of other things that are happening in the book. They're getting into battles and all this stuff. And Nick eventually has to come save Bree from her mind prison that Arthur's ghost put her in. And I'm like, did someone tell Nick, or has Nick given approval for this situation? Like, what is going on? And Bree is just like, they're both so meaningful to me, and they're both great, and I'm like, can we establish where she stands on either of them? I'm cool if she's like, you know what, I love Nick, but he is, my friend in this way, and then I love Sel as in the true romantic partner. Or if we are going to have the conversation about being in a throuple or polyamorous or whatever, I need it to be clear. And it's really bothering me that it is not clear. Because it doesn't make sense to who the characters are. And to me, I feel based on the way the characters have been written and established, to me, I feel Sel is definitely the character that is going to manipulate your emotions to get what he wants because he's an incubus. And that he's saying, yeah, I do actually have feelings for you and all this stuff, but in the end, he doesn't. Whereas I feel like Nick is the more stand-up guy that would not be okay that the person that is supposed to be protecting him and by default the scion of Arthur, like Nick would not be okay with him just like moving in on his girl, especially because they have other past histories of being mad at each other and doing things to each other to kind of get back at each other. It's just, it was very confusing, and I just don't know where I stand on it. So because of that, I was like, I can't give it a 5, just because I'm like, I just need that piece to be clear, and it really wasn't, and it really bothered me. So yeah, that's where I stand on it. Overall, like I said, I really like the way that this author is infusing U.S. history with the legends and the history of the Knights of the Round Table and Camelot and Arthur, and Arthurian legend. I do think there's a lot of things that they speak a lot of Welsh, and it's not always translated, and that kind of bothers me, because I'm like, dude, I don't speak Welsh, and it's not like it's a base language to a different language that I do understand. And so, like, I do wish that there was a little bit more clarity on that. And then I also just really like the whole concept of the U.S. history piece. I love when we get like a good alternate reality U.S. history that involves magic and stuff. It's fun. But that said, I do have a lot of questions in terms of if this order has or intended to be established as a fully like white people order. Where do like, and then they also talk about like how there's another group, the root crafters. Those are predominantly Black and African American and predominantly descendant of the enslaved. It's not very clear like how they all existed together before transatlantic nonsense, and I would kind of like a little bit more on that, and I think that's just because as a historian I'm like, can we explain some things there just to flesh it out, even though it has absolutely nothing to do with the story. I'm just a nerd. I was telling another friend of mine about this book, and I was like, it reminds me a lot of the TV show Motherland Fort Salem, which was a show that I absolutely loved. Very sad that it was canceled. And they did kind of the same thing where they took an element of actual U.S. history, the Salem witch trials, and basically flipped it on its head. And it's like, okay, if witches are real and the Salem witch trials didn't actually happen, we actually turned those witches into the American military, and there technically was a civil war, except instead of being split north-south, we are split east-west. Like, there was just a lot of like random historic facts that were just like altered enough to fit this new dimension of US, and no explanation. I'm like, I need a book. I need a textbook. And that's kind of how I feel with this one. Sometimes I'm just like, can I get a textbook of the explanation of these lines, and like where it goes within US history and what parts of US history are different for this world that has been created. So like there's those pieces of it, but I think it's just because I'm nerdy. But yeah, like I said, overall 4.75, still a really good book, and series. Again, second book in the series. I am going to start the third book, but I'm going to wait till after the holidays, because one, I need a break. I was like, I need something a little happier because I got so just bothered by the book, and so I was like, I should probably read something a little more holiday-y. So yeah, so there's that. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. Thank you so much as always for following, like, comment, share, subscribe if you so choose. I think this, if I did my math correctly, I think I'm posting this after the holidays. Might be before the holidays, but either way, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, depending on when you watch this. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next book review. And again, depending on when I post this, might even be in the next year, brand new year. So I will see you all in the next book review. Bye!